Welcome. Welcome. No need to look so afraid, my dear. I won't bite. Yet. Most of you know my name. Some of you may even know my story. Well, the one you've been told, anyway. So my being here in the flesh must be quite the surprise to you. Because I should be dead, shouldn't I? Petulant men and vengeful gods have been beheading women like me for centuries, but we just keep coming back. It's almost like we're supposed to be here. You see, you humans have this insufferable practice of trying to cram everything into a box. What's your hurry? You're all going to end up in one when you're dead. And take it from me, it's no fun in there when you're not. And there's a good reason why you can't kill a woman like me, and no, it's not because I'm a vampire. It's because I possess something which simply cannot be killed. So for those of you who aren't privy to my story, allow me to introduce myself properly. My name is Lucy Westenra, and I am the fourth bride of Count Dracula. I know. I promised you this was going to be my story in my words, but let's be honest. My entire existence has been defined by that man. Do you know what it's like to have every utterance of your name tied to your ex? It's almost like they've forgotten that I was the first vampire born on English soil. Ever. Where's my Pioneer Award? There's no bench in Whitby dedicated to me. All anyone wants to talk about when they mention me is him. And you know what? I get it. Much as it pains me to admit it, Count Dracula is the one that got me started on this journey, even if he didn't stick around to see the end of it. Here was a creature as intoxicating as brandy, as heady as cigar smoke, exotic and familiar all at the same time. He wasn't afraid of the darkness in my soul. He saw the bare face of my deepest desires and didn't shy away from them. He embraced them, in fact. And with his voice which held the weight of centuries, he promised me he could fulfill every single one of them. And I believed him. So when he made me a proposal quite unlike any other, how could I refuse? Could you? So I suppose my beef isn't really with Dracula after all. Although where was he when I was having my head hacked off? I didn't see him flying in with his cloak of bats then. Come to think of it, I haven't seen him since... Well, since before I died. So it's even more galling that after 125 years, nobody seems to have stopped to wonder what happened to poor Lucy. There are so many variations of the story of what happened all those years ago. Some of them don't even feature me at all. Mina and I are apparently the same person. Me and Mina, can you imagine? You've heard of codependency, right? Where you die and someone else's life flashes before your eyes? Well, that was me for the longest time. So it was only when all the characters in the biggest chapter of my life were long dead that I finally felt like I had the opportunity to tell you my side of the story. And dearest Mina, I really did love her, but she was satisfied with a lifetime of servitude and submission, and that just wasn't for me. She offered up all her talents in service of her husband, keeping house, playing at her typewriting, to facilitate Jonathan achieving fame and fortune. Don't get me wrong, Jonathan was a good and wholesome man, for the most part, and by all accounts a dedicated husband to Mina. I liked him. But some of us are just destined to become so much more than a man's wife. You see, when Count Dracula first arrived in England, his ship thrown upon the Tate Hill sands in Whitby by a fearsome storm, he landed in full view of mine and Mina's lodgings. We could see the beach where the ship was wrecked, count the 199 steps to the abbey which the black dog flew up. We could even see the bench where I was to meet him myself. He didn't choose Mina. He chose me. And he chose me for a reason. Now, call me big-headed, but back then I was a fucking delight. Charming, naturally. Beautiful to the eyes of some. Spontaneous, sociable, fun, and filthy, stinking rich. Unlike dear, dutiful Mina, my mind was open to all the possibilities of life, and I longed for them all. Granted, my privileged upbringing meant that I hadn't had to strive to find a man to provide for me as she had, in a world where women having the freedom to speak, think, and act as they wished was a new and frightful thing. Yet, with wealth and status of my own, being married off to the first eligible suitor was what everyone expected of me nonetheless. Yes, they were practically lined up outside the door to get a sniff of me. And why wouldn't they be? I could give you 100 reasons why they'd want to marry me, the great estate they'd stand to inherit being just one of them. But with all of these proposals piled at my feet, how could I possibly be expected to choose just one? As if one man could satisfy all my desires. The world tells us to choose love, but what choice has love ever given us? Why do we fall in love instead of walking into it willingly? Why do we sing songs of its power if we can control who we do or do not choose to love? I could have fallen in love with 100 different people given half the chance. I can't tell you how it wounded me to turn down the proposal of my dear friend John, though I admit the affection I felt for him wasn't enough to build a life on. It broke me again to reject darling Quincy, that strong, handsome, virile cowboy full of the promise of the new world. But lust alone does not a happy marriage make. In the end, I felt compelled to choose Arthur, forsaking all the others. He was the one for me, the one I was supposed to marry, if you believe my family and their high society peers. And there's no denying it, we were a good fit, we were good together. But there was a part of me that always wished I could have said yes to all three of them. All three offering something so different, something I wanted. And why shouldn't I have had all three of them when they all desired me just as much? Because society said so. Pfft. But you must understand things were different for me back then. In that corseted time, the idea of a woman sharing herself, her love, with more than one person was an impossible concept. You see, for these kinds of men, a woman's purity was her greatest gift. They didn't wish to marry a woman with her own thoughts, needs, desires, God forbid, opinions. They wished to marry a fantasy, an untouched girl to make an honest wife of. I often wonder, even if I hadn't been changed, how quickly Arthur would have turned on me had I fallen short of this purity. Had I enjoyed the carnal consummation of our marriage? Once he had claimed his prize, once that purity had gone, would he have valued me as he once had? Would any of them? I don't know. I didn't survive long enough to find out. Back then, there was only one man who valued me, exactly as I was, and as I was meant to be. And that was precisely what drew me to him. When Count Dracula offered to make me his bride, he offered me great strength and power, undying beauty, love without limits, an eternity of possibility stretched out before me. Could any of you honestly say no to that, when all that was asked in return was a simple drop of blood? I drew my fair share from him too. I didn't see my resulting condition as an affliction or a curse. Not when my every sensation became heightened. Every touch became ecstasy. Every sight more beautiful than I could possibly have imagined. My body was electrified, and with every satisfaction I became hungrier and hungrier for what was to come. My eyes had been opened. There was nothing left for me in their world. My previous life was merely a skin to be shed to reveal my new form. But I was naive to think my friends would see it the same way. Transformation requires effort. Change is a labour. And after such exertion, I needed time to rest and recuperate. Something they interpreted as a terrible sickness. Some unexplained malady which must be treated with prayer and old wives' remedies. To this day, I still can't bear the offensive odour of alliums. As the days passed, my mortal body changed before their eyes. I was becoming what I was meant to be. But they refused to see it. Refused to see the real me. They could only see what I was before, what they wanted me to be. They were so determined to restore this previous version of me that they would drain their own blood to make it so. They clamoured for it, even old Van Helsing. And they felt that same dizzy rush as they poured themselves into me one after the other. If there were blood in me still, my cheeks would be scarlet at the thought. And they saw how it nourished me, like life coming back into my body. They lined up willingly to give it, but they condemned me for how I craved it. After all, nobody wants the fallen woman, but they'll all stick a foot out to trip her. The worst part of it all is, by Arthur's own logic, the sharing of blood was itself a marriage, a physical consummation. No contract. No trinket. Nothing can compare to the physical affirmation of one's love for another. Therefore, I was his wife, but I was also the wife of John, Quincy, Van Helsing, and of course the Count. And surely through it they all became wedded to each other too. In my true form, I could have had as many of these marriages as I'd have wanted. I could have opened their hearts and minds to the unending possibilities of love, genderless, borderless, beautiful. Perhaps to you that doesn't sound so radical. But for me, for that, I had to die. It wasn't even the act itself that was so heinous. After all, the men made it out alive. It was the idea of me, a woman, taking pleasure from it. That terrified them more than any monster. And we all know what happens to the monsters in these stories. In those final days, Arthur looked at me with such revulsion that when the time finally did come to say goodbye, I kept him at a distance. I couldn't bear to see the way he looked at me. The real me. They turned me into an abomination. A blood-sucking child-eater. A headline in their newspapers. A bloofer lady. That is how the world chose to see Lucy Westenra. Even those who loved her so much they were willing to bleed, even to die, for her. And let's not forget, Mina also indulged in the unspeakable act with the Count, although that was an act of vengeance rather than affection on his part. After all, they had just killed one of his wives. And yet it is her name that is uttered in such reverent tones even now. A thoroughly forward-thinking modern woman, that's what they call her. For having a modicum of intelligence and a typewriter. Incidentally, Jonathan lay with the other brides too, but you don't see either of them having their heads cut off, do you? Double standard, much? Mina was happy inside her box. I broke myself out of mine. Neither choice is right, neither is wrong, but I did what was right for me. And much as I may chastise Mina for her choice, she wasn't the one who drove the stake through my heart in the end. Nor was it even Bram. It was society's expectations of what a woman could and could not be. How love could and could not be shown. To allow me to indulge in acts of love with whomever I wanted. to succumb to the courtship of an exotic stranger from an unknown land, to free me from the weight of what a Victorian woman was supposed to be, that was a fate worse than death. At least according to the publishers. Mina doesn't look so forward-thinking now, does she? But, thankfully for me, like all vampires and revenants, the true Lucy Westenra can never die. Head or no head. I am resurrected here before your very eyes here tonight. Hundreds of years have elapsed since I last walked this earth. And like a vampire that keeps coming back from the dead, so history repeats itself. Women like me are still fighting for autonomy over their own flesh and blood. Still facing the stigma of defying conventions in their thoughts, their deeds, even their relationships. Still wrestling to fling off the shackles of marriage, monogamy, motherhood, beauty standards, and other people's expectations. And still kicking against those who would confine us to a lifetime of keeping house in a coffin of our own making. More of us will die before they realise that we won't all fit into the box that they make for us. More of us will be revered only in our obituaries, and we're not here to speak our own truth. But while you can bury a body, nobody can bury your spirit. We possess forces that are more powerful even than death, so let them try to silence us, vilify us, subjugate, beat and burn us, because we are so much more than just our bodies. We are our thoughts, our indomitable spirits, our motherfucking choices. We are the freedoms that we fight for. We represent what they can't understand, what they fear and want to keep buried, but we will not stay in our graves, and no stake can stop what's in our hearts. So, take this as a call to arms. They may destroy our bodies, but never who we are. And who am I? Lucy fucking Westenra, and I am nobody's bride anymore.